Reagan Hatcher to discuss what has happened in the state legislature this last session. I want to kick it off by giving Miss Marinita Barber, who's our parks superintendent temporarily, so don't go too hard on her, the opportunity to kind of give an overview of what's happening with the parks and to deal with some of the issues that we are facing at Marquette Park. Ms. Barber?
Okay, let me unmute. Good evening, how are you? Okay, Councilman, thank you for the invite and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our beach readiness. You will hear from Detective Simon Lilly, and you will hear from Kamisha Jackson, who heads Marquette. We are in the process of getting our beach ready. The sand is being cleared at Lake Street Beach. We are clearing the boat launch. We are all excited about our launch on Saturday, which is when the park will officially open. We have talked about the lifeguards have been hired. I know there were some questions about how many lifeguards there were. We've hired 14 lifeguards. 10 of those they're officially ready. The other 4 are now being processed. The chairs are up and painted. Our traffic department is currently, I think out today, they were painting the bike lanes, freshening those up for us. I know there's some talk about when the park will close, the security in the park, and I will let Detective Lilly handle that. There will be some things that Kamisha will share based on Marquette Park. So I guess if you're ready for us to get started, we will start with Kamisha.
Okay, hello everyone. So as you all know, the beach will be opening on Saturday, May the 29th. We have 7 ticket takers. Both booths will be open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. That's every day, unless we have inclement weather. In that case, we will close or we will not open. Anytime it rains pretty much at the beach, we have to close it. So that's one of the reasons. Marquette is, over the last 3 weeks, we've been booking a lot of events. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. So please bear with us if you do call. And if you call, please leave a message. People will call all day long and will not leave a message. Leave us a message and we'll get back with you, because we are in peak season, and that's for events as well. You know, we were in the pandemic and a lot of people have not been out. So they've been calling us and calling us and calling us to get their events in. And we're happy about that. I'm just asking you to bear with us as you call to book your events. We're ready for the summer. I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say. We will have some events this summer, and we will let you all know when we do have events like we've been doing via social media. Thank you all for supporting the lobster and seafood events that we've been having every 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month. Your support has been very good, and we appreciate it. We plan on going throughout the summer, or as much as you would like for us to go. And that's all I have at this moment.
And Kamisha, the parking meters are up and active, right?
Yes, they are. The batteries were put in May the 18th. So they were asleep, but now they're awake and they're ready for this weekend.
Thank you. Detective Lilly, you want to kind of talk about how we handle closing at dusk and some of the ATVs that we have brought back to Lake Street currently?
Okay, good evening, everyone. So we do have all of our ATVs back. So they are ready to go. We also have Lake County, who is also housed with us over at the beach. So they have their ATVs there also. They've also bought two very good, useful tools. And those tools are called it's a launching tool that can launch up to 400 feet out to the beach if someone is in distress, and you launch it out. It inflates once it gets out there, and the individual that's in distress is able to grab onto that launch. For an individual up to 350, 400 pounds to be able to reel them in. So they have provided that tool for us as well. We're also in the process of bettering our communication, and that's with the lifeguards, ticket takers, and the police. So we're not depending on phones, because as we know out there, our cellular reception is usually kind of up and down, even with the cell tower being right there at the beach. So we're working with that. We will have between 3 and 4 patrols each shift throughout the week, and on the weekend between 4 and 6 patrols on each shift, and that's the day shift and the evening shift. And that's between us, Gary PD, and also Lake County Police. Lake County Police has dedicated an extra day. The last few years they've been here, they've patrolled Saturday and Sunday, but this year they're adding Friday. And they also have patrols kind of coming through, checking on us throughout the week, and they check in over at the COP office on Lake Street. So we have gotten that news from the sheriff and his commanders in reference to patrol. We do close at dusk. And as far as ticket and towing during that time, we try to give individuals a little time to come and get their vehicles and remove their vehicles. And so in the past, that has worked. I've tried something since then, and that is just to see who parks in the bike lane. I park across the street, who parks in the bike lane, who leaves it, who comes and say, hey, can we park here, who looks at the sign, and those individuals who does not adhere to the signs without any type of warning from myself, their vehicles get towed. Yesterday, we towed about 7 vehicles out of the bike lane. But of course, we don't have 24-hour patrols out there at the beach. And so when they see an opportunity to park, that's kind of what they do. So we are working with the police department and also the parks department, and trying to provide a shift for the evening when our officers vacate and leave. When beach patrol officers get off, and that shift is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we're currently trying to work the kinks out with that. It's just about getting the manpower and the funds to be able to do so. In reference to the shooting that occurred inside of the Aquatorium parking lot, I was actually over at Lake Street during the time attempting to clear that lot, and heard the shooting. And so again, the call was put out. Our officers in the district responded, as well as myself. But of course, when we got there, no one knew anything and everyone was gone. And so we're trying to come up with a plan to curtail that that type of element in the park, but with the park being so welcoming and us not being able to kind of say, hey, you can come, but you can, and it's just hard to know what element is coming into the park. And so we are coming up with a plan to be able to, it's almost like the thing that they have at the mall, at South Lake Mall, where, they have a curfew and juveniles, in which we think that's kind of where the riffraff came from. They have to be accompanied with parents and stuff like that to be able to come and enjoy the park, because a lot of times we'll see stuff on Facebook. It'll be like, hey, balloon fight at Marquette Park, and people want to use Marquette Park to advertise and get more people to come. And you'll see parents just dropping their children off and leaving for the day until they're called back when it's too late to come and pick up their children. So we want to try to implement something like that. So we're all working to be able to combat the criminal element that does go on out here in Miller and at our beach. And so the process as it relates to shootings, it's just like any other shooting within the city of Gary. If a shooting happens, a report is taken, evidence is collected, and it goes to an investigator. And once it goes to that investigator, the investigator does what they do in reference to what they have, and then following up with the leads that they get and ultimately prosecuting. And so in reference to this shooting and even the last one where some shots were fired, it's an ongoing investigation. I've spoken with the chief in reference to these, and it's an ongoing investigation, and they can only disseminate information once they have credible information to be able to disseminate to the public. And so we do have cameras. We do have cameras in that area over on Lake Street and over at Marquette in the big parking lot. And so we'll utilize those tools to assist in the investigation. So that's where we are as it relates to Beach Patrol. And I'll accept any questions once it is time for those.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Barber and Ms. Jackson and Officer Lilly. I also wanted to note, I saw some of the comments on Nextdoor about the cost of parking for out-of-state or out of area visitors. Those costs are increasing. The city council will be voting on that at our next meeting on Tuesday to raise the fees. So the visitor rate will be $10. The resident rate will be $8. The season pass for residents will be $75. The visitor season pass will be $100. And it sort of goes on from there, but we will make sure that the new fees are disseminated so that everyone is aware of that. The meters are activated. They will be certainly an asset in terms of revenue, but we got to make sure that there's actual enforcement. So we certainly thank Detective Lilly and his team. I did want to acknowledge that Chief Evans is on, but I think Officer Lilly covered quite a bit of it. If you have questions, just FYI, please put those in the chat box. I'm going to read a few of these that I see have come up. Now, so will Gary be checking the pay for parking meters? And that answer is yes. What about installing some type of video surveillance? And someone else says along those lines, the cameras are on in the park. At the last Zoom meeting, we were told the cameras were not on and were not going to be put on. It is great that they are on. And then it was a question, how are parking fees going to be enforced? Are there case numbers for the shootings that occurred? And are the buoys paid for and ready to be installed on the next calm day? So that's a series of questions. And so Ms. Barber, I'll ask your team to kind of take the lead and jump in on each of those where relevant.
Okay, so I will say, I'll start with the buoys. The buoys, the contract has been done. The buoys are paid for. And I will let Kamisha talk a little bit about that. What happened was there were some parts that were not in. They were on order. We did learn today that it may be an additional 2 to 3 weeks before they're here, but they are paid for.
That's correct. That's the information we received today from the vendor.
All right, Officer Lilly, go ahead, I'm sorry, continue.
So as far as the pay, how much you're paying is concerned, when you enter the parking lot, there's the ticket booth and you have a ticket, we call them a ticket specialist. So they'll inform you whatever that cost is for you to come into the parking lot. It's the same as that's been done in the past. Nothing has changed with that.
I believe, and maybe Officer Lilly can help, they're referring to the parking meters that are on the other side of the park, not where the parking attendants are.
They're talking about the cash,
The pay station.
The pay station. There you go.
Pay stations, right. Did you want to take that up, Officer Lilly, as well as the questions around the case number that came up?
Sure.
Okay.
So as it relates to enforcing pay station parking, We have individuals that will be on ATVs, and we also have individuals that will be in marked police cars. Those individuals in marked police cars are tasked to not only patrol the area, but also patrol and monitor individuals, the pay stations that are on Marquette Road, and also the pay stations that are in the lot. We've had success doing that with 2 specific officers that we like using, and they do a really good job in monitoring that. So they will be at it again and doing just that. And so that's how it will be enforced through patrols in our police vehicles. As it relates to, what was the other question? Installing some type of video. What about installing some type of video surveillance? So the current cameras that we currently have out there, they have been donated to Marquette Park through American Eagle Security. They are solar cameras and they work really well. Myself and my I'd say my co-backup officer, he also monitors the cameras, and they're monitored through iPads. And so they're high definition cameras. We need more of them. And so we are currently, I spoke with them today. They came out and talking about seeing what the cost would be of getting more cameras. And so, like I said, these were donated to Marquette Park just to see how well they work. This is a new venture for this company. And they picked Marquette Park and the relationship that I have with them to donate the cameras to us to be able to utilize. So we do utilize those. And I'm not sure who said that the cameras, that you all were told that the cameras were off. Those cameras record 24/7. They're also volume control, where you can hear individuals talking, you can hear the wind, you can hear on these cameras as well. They're motion censored cameras, and so any type of motion they automatically record also. So we do have those, and those features are available for those cameras. And so, like I said, we just need more surveillance out there to assist us with with issues such as that, and monitoring the park as well. Part of these case numbers for the shootings. There are case numbers for the shootings. However, those are it's once it goes to a detective, then a detective kind of monitors that case. There's some cases that they cannot put out because of the sensitive information and how it could alter or ultimately blow whatever case that they do have. But there are case numbers for those shootings, and the detectives have those. Emergency phone towers throughout the park. That would be for Miss Barber.
Okay, so I am not sure currently how those work. Somebody told me they were not connected and they were not sure. So I'll have to reach out, because that is something that we do want to see work in the park. I didn't get that information until today, and I was not able to get somebody to get back to me before the meeting started. Okay, and as it relates to the trash cans, somebody said that they saw a lot of the blue trash barrels yesterday with no tops or lids, very full of trash. And I'm just not sure if that was just full of trash yesterday, because we had to go out there and do a major cleanup where we had, a couple of crews combined on the ground to pick up the trash. But Kamisha can share that they're going to be very aggressive on the trash pickup schedule. Kamisha, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
So the schedule that I have thus far is recycling will pick up on Monday, Wednesdays, and holiday weekends, and Republic will pick up Tuesday and Fridays. And what I do want everyone to know and understand is that Marquette does go out and clean, but we have a very small staff. So I have 2 part-time workers and 1 full-time that does not belong to Marquette. Currently, he's on vacation. So I have 2 part-time guys that go out and try to clean. It's a lot. It's an awful lot for 2 people to go out and clean that beach as much as they trash it. We put the cans out. We say carry in, carry out. You can preach it until you blue in the face. Everyone will not do what they're supposed to do. They'll go out, they'll just drop the cash, and they'll be standing right the trash, and they'll stand right next to a garbage can. It just doesn't make sense. So we're trying to figure out a solution to make people put the trash in the garbage. That will really help us a lot. Because not only do we have to take care of pick the trash up from the wall to the street, we also have to make sure the facility is prepared for the next event. So we're working 7 days a week out there. You know, a lot of people work 5, we work 7. So we're beach and pavilion. And I don't know if everyone really realized that because of some of the comments, but I just want to paint a little picture for you.
Thank you so much to both of you. I did want to note that Ms. Barber has only been on the job now for 3 weeks. And so she's interim, and I didn't want people to think that she didn't know what was going on when it came to the emergency machines in the park. So there's a big learning curve with the number of parks we have throughout the city. So I just wanted to say that because Ms. Barber was kind enough to really step up and volunteer. This is not her full-time role with the city. She has a full-time role as the Public Works Director. But because there was a vacancy, she stepped up to do that. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. There's a couple more questions. If the park was actually closed at the regular time, it would reduce the amount of trash to be picked up. That's a comment. You can respond to that. And then, can the police enforce the closing time of the park at dusk? And thank you, Ms. Barber.
You want me to attack the trash too? I can.
You can take it if you want.
Okay. If the park was actually closed at regular time, it would reduce the amount of trash to be picked up. It absolutely would. No doubt about that. It would definitely decrease the amount of trash that is out there. So the officers haven't been on staff. We've had some warm days. And so we have utilized our skeleton crew within patrol to patrol. So they do what they can do with the manpower that they've had during the times that we've not been able to have beach patrol, or our staff hasn't started. And so once our staff starts, then you'll see a decrease in the amount of activity that happens at the beach during those times, which would ultimately decrease the amount of trash that is that's put out there. And so, like I said, just coming up with a plan to be able to enforce and patrol throughout the night is what we are working on and trying to get done, especially before the next warm day. Even if I have to take away from my day shift or my evening shift to attempt to put a guy out there, then, that's what we are prepared to do. But, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul in those sense. And so we're just working on getting the manpower to be able to dedicate it to that shift. And so if an officer sees someone throwing trash, the officer knows to ticket and fine that person as it relates to trash. But just as it is with anywhere else throughout the city and in any other park, when you have a police presence, who's really going to, do something while they're sitting there? if it happened while we were there, we would definitely enforce littering and ticket and fine in those senses. But of course, it doesn't happen when we are around. So thanks for the comment. That will definitely decrease the amount of trash once we get the patrols and are able to continue to patrol throughout the night into the morning throughout the park.
Okay, so we have a few more questions about whether or not the money we receive from the federal government can be used for security. I'm going to say no, but I do want to announce that over the next 4 to 6 weeks, the City Council's Ways and Means Committee will be holding public meetings where we will discuss how those funds can be used. As you may know, the City of Gary received roughly $83 million. That is divided over 2 years. We got one part of it this month. The other half comes in March of 2022. All those dollars have to be appropriated. There are very clear categories that we have to follow, and tying those back really to the public health crisis. There's still a lot to learn. We got a 150-page document from the Treasury Department, and they continue to promulgate new regulations. So these dollars will be closely watched. I will tell you that there's funds for limited infrastructure, especially around water and sewer and broadband. There's certainly dollars for small businesses, homeowners, folks who worked on the front lines, first responders. There is dollars for revenue shortages. So if we're able to look in the last fiscal year's budget and compare it to the current fiscal year or the one before that, and show where there was an effect, a negative effect based on COVID-19, we're able to recoup some of those dollars. So again, it's highly regulated, so we're going to be very careful and thoughtful in how those dollars are spent. There's another question here related to the Juneteenth event and whether or not that event will proceed if it rains. And so I'll turn to Kamisha.
But that's a private event. So if they want to go on with the event, they will. That's not a Marquette sponsored event.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking. I did want to note as well, I talked with Attorney McCain earlier, and there can be donations directed for those who want to support surveillance and security systems. He mentioned that there might be the possibility, and this again, we've not talked with the Friends of Marquette Park, but there could be the possibility of partnering with the Friends of Marquette Park, for those who want to donate to that organization, which is a great organization, to help fund some of these surveillance and security initiatives. I think there was a question about whether or not the 2 shootings were captured on the video surveillance. You may or may not be able to answer that, Officer Lilly. And let me get the next question that just popped in. Are there any plans to gate off the park between dusk and dawn, like Washington Park in Michigan City and Whiting in West Beach? So I'll give you all an opportunity to answer those questions. Thank you.
Well, as it relates to gating off the park, that would be a great idea. I mean, hands down, it would be a great idea. I know there are some that would say, oh, well, then the traffic will come to me. If the park was gated off and they were able to, our traffic division was able to kind of make Montgomery from Oak Avenue and Locust a 2-way and gate off Grand Boulevard at Forest, Locust at Montgomery, and Oak Avenue at Montgomery, we would be able to shut down our park, because the most riffraff comes from vehicles that come in with individuals, vehicles, because that's the quickest way to get away when you're doing something ignorant. And so to be able to control and curb that type of element coming into the park, once we close, it would be great. That would be great. The only hiccup we would run into is if Marquette Pavilion was having an event and the Aquatorium was having an event. But other than that, we would definitely be able to curve and control the traffic that goes through there better, because while we clear, I've said this at every meeting, while we clear off the park, you'll have an officer going in circles all day, every day attempting to clear those lanes and those parking spaces that keep filling up continuously. And so if we are able to gate the park off during those times, then we can definitely curve and control what element comes in at that time. The noise, the trash, I do think all of that would become a little to none if we were able to do that. So that's it was brought up by one of the mayor's administrators. They asked for some quotes in reference to what that would look like. So that is definitely being looked at as an option for the future.
Okay, now see Mary Ann, Bess, I see your question.
About the buoys. So will there be buoys that are east of the city-county line? Will they start there? That was the question. I'm sorry we missed that question, Mary Ann. But do we have answers for Ms. Bess?
We don't have an answer unless Kamisha has looked at that. I did send the information over to Kamisha and Christine. Christine is not with us tonight because she's actually on the beach with the lifeguards. But Mary Ann, I will get you an answer to that question.
Thank you, Ms. Barber, and thank you, Mr. German, member of our Port Authority, for that question related to the gates. Definitely want to look into that with our traffic department, I'm sure, and all the individuals involved to make sure that we can do that and do it the right way. Okay, so just want to remind everyone that this won't be our last conversation about beach issues. When we have our June meeting, even though it's a different topic, we'll be sure to follow up on a lot of these matters that have been discussed, whether it's the emergency machines, whether it's the parking, whether it's the littering and trash, to see if we're making the kind of progress that we need to make to provide a high quality experience for everyone. We also have this evening two of our state legislators who happen to be First District residents, and I wanted to give each of them an opportunity to give us an update briefly about their work in the state legislature and things that are happening on that front that could affect our area, especially. So we'll start with Senator Melton.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to double check with Representative Hatcher. I know she had another meeting she had to attend. Do you want to go first or you want me to go first, Rep?
You go ahead. You're going to talk about the budget?
Yeah. I'll kind of give an overview from the Senate perspective. But first, I just want to say thank you to Ms. Jackson, Ms. Barber, and Officer Lilly for your service to our community. We truly appreciate it. And I want to thank Councilman Godwin for inviting us. I believe this is our second opportunity to come before the First District and provide an update to the Indiana General Assembly. And we know that this was a year like any other year, unlike any other year in terms of how we had to address COVID-19. I think going into this session, we knew we were going to be tackling some very tough issues. One of those issues would be to address one of the things that we have to do every other year, and that's create a budget that's going to address several issues in terms of education, in terms of overall economic development, public safety, and so forth. Representative Hatcher is going to talk about some things that we worked collaboratively on that passed unanimously. But what I want to do very quickly is talk about the state budget and what was passed and how that impacted us locally here in Gary in particular. So every 2 years, we pass a budget in the state of Indiana. This year, the total budget spend is about $37 billion. So just to give you an idea, we have an estimated combined balance of about $2.3 billion. Just to give you an idea of our fiscal soundness as a state. And that played a role in us rebounding or being more sustainable throughout the entire pandemic compared to other communities. I'm blessed to have the opportunity to serve as ranking minority member on Appropriations Committee, but also as ranking minority member on the State Budget Committee. And midway during session, we received a report, an update in terms of the state's revenue forecast. And that forecast is about $3 billion of additional revenue, probably close to $5 billion in certain areas where the state of Indiana, because of the federal government and the American Rescue Plan, was able to allocate more funds towards things we traditionally would not fund at this level. We were able to put $500 million to unemployment trust insurance. That helped to insure up our unemployment pool of dollars. We were able to pay off the double tracking project through the RDA at the tune of $231 million. That was going to be originally $12 million per year for 20 years type of project. So that was able to be cashed out and paid for in full. We put $900 million for the next level connections. That's to address the Indiana Department of Transportation in roads and bridges and the highways and byways and improvements of those projects. $250 million, and this is something that was extremely important that we've seen during the pandemic in terms of communities having access to broadband, and $160 million in our water infrastructure. Indiana, especially in the northern part of the state, we have some of the oldest water and sewer lines in the nation and in the state of Indiana. So it's extremely important that we focus more attention on our water and sewer lines throughout the entire state, but in particular in those older communities. I'm hopeful that the next federal stimulus package, and I'm sure the council is looking out for this, which is called the American Jobs Plan, and this is the Biden administration is pushing for. That's going to be specifically for infrastructure. Earlier, Councilman Godwin mentioned that the current funding that they receive, a lot of that is geared specifically just for water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, broadband, things of that nature. But if this next infrastructure package were to pass, it would allow us to address more roads, bridges, our transportation systems, our facilities, our schools, even more in terms of hardening the infrastructure and improving that. Pretty much it's a jobs bill to put Americans back to work. So, and that to reinvest back in our economy. But going back to the budget, I just want to give a high level of 50% of our state budget, that 30+ million that I talk about, 50% of that budget goes through K through 12 funding. So this was the first time, I would say, since I've been in the legislature over the last 5 years, that you've seen tremendous bipartisan support for the budget. We've funded K through 12 education at record highs. Now, the only reason why that was able to be done was because of the federal funding that we received. We were able to ensure that our teachers receive a pay increase on a local level, ensuring that they at least, those districts that have teachers that are under that $40,000 salary cap, that everyone would get up to that $40,000. And that was a starting point. 2 years ago, the governor had a commission on teacher pay, and that was one of the recommendations. So in the state of Indiana, all school corporations must get their teachers up to $40,000 in pay. So that's, you're going to have some districts that may say they can't do that. They can't meet that threshold. They have to send to the Department of Education why they can't pay their teachers that $40,000. Then that has to be addressed. A couple things I was a little disappointed on when it comes down to the actual budget is we weren't able to give our higher ed institutions the funding that they needed to do capital projects. However, one of the things I was able to advocate for was that rehabilitation and replacement grant funding at $11.6 million for regional universities, in particular for Purdue and IU. So that means that our Indiana University Northwest and Gary will be eligible for additional funding for more development as well. Around the 11.6 million is accessible. And this money was made available because of IUP-wise split apart. If you remember it, in Southern Indiana, they split apart and there was funding remaining. We have $75 million that was appropriated for Career Accelerator Fund. And this is essentially to help folks get credentialed and more qualified for workforce. We fought to increase our direct service providers, and that's individuals that work directly with the disabled, the mentally disabled. They were making about $10 to $11 an hour. So we were able to invest more for those individuals. We got them up to $15 an hour, which is a huge accomplishment in a very conservative General Assembly. For over 10 years, the food banks across the state of Indiana was only funded at $300,000. Now think about that. For over a decade, the state of Indiana only funded $300,000 because of the pandemic. Everyone has seen the long lines at food banks, at food pantries. We were able to get that up to $1 million over the biennium to ensure that our food banks had the resources that they need. From a transportation perspective, I talked about the RDA. We also had a next level flights, which is a subsidizing flights that in the Indianapolis airport. Now, one of the things I would say that I'm excited about is I was able to secure the $1.2 million to further study and build out the infrastructure in Buffington Harbor here in Gary. When we passed the legislation to move the casinos out of Buffington Harbor onto 8094, it was done because we were able to pitch the concept of developing the lakefront and maximizing our transportation assets. The reason why I say that, we know that our Gary Airport is very well known for its access to Chicagoland area, but also the opportunity to expand in cargo. A lot of folks say we need to move more towards passenger, but that's, in my opinion, I believe we are in a game-changing state when we talk about expanding access to cargo. That would bring a tremendous amount of revenue to the city of Gary, and opening up and building Buffington Harbor to help make that a catalyst is going to be a transformational for the city. So we have the funding for the phase 2 of Buffington Harbor, which I was extremely excited about. Next level trails, for those that are very passionate about trails, we added another $60 million to update and upgrade trails across the state of Indiana. There are many other things I want to talk about. I don't want to take all the time up from Representative Hatcher. We could talk about police reform that she's going to share, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of more questions as well. So I'll pause there and I'll come back and touch on a few things after Representative Hatcher goes to her portion.
So now we'll have Representative Hatcher, but I want to highlight a few of the questions that we've gotten, and that's a great update. Thank you so much, Senator Melton, for all that you're doing. Regarding water and sewage, what is being done to replace lead water pipes going into our homes here in Miller? Another question from Alan Harrell. Will the first district be a recipient of any sewer infrastructure funding? Many areas within the first are still on septic. This will be a great investment if possible. And I can respond to the last one in part. I agree. I'm hoping that we're able to find some creative way, working with the Gary Sanitary District, to get homes that are currently on septic on the sewer. I'm trying to see if we can use some of the funds from the American Rescue Plan, which has water and sewer specifically outlined in there, to create some kind of matching program for homeowners who would like to be converted to sewer use. So Senator Melton, you may have other things to say. There's also a question about will the bill that passed that rolls back protections for wetlands affect us here in Northwest Indiana? So Senator Melton.
Yeah, look, I'll take that wetlands bill first. Of course, that was something that we was in strict opposition to. For those that may not be aware, there was a piece of legislation that aided in deregulating how the state of Indiana protected our wetlands. And we know that we are rich in our ecosystem here, in particular in Gary, in the Miller area, in the wetlands and the filtration of our water systems. And there's a lot of folks, and to be honest with you, a lot of developers were pushing for this deregulation. So I would just say we need to be very watchful. If we see projects or things that are going to impede upon the wetlands, we need to talk to our leadership. We need to talk to the state leadership in terms of these projects and see if we can kind of push back or combat them. Going to the water infrastructure piece, I think once, and I agree with the councilman, I think this is something you got to work with the sanitation district. But of course, it's all about funding, making sure that funding is available. So I'll be interested in seeing what the city of Gary is doing with the funding that they have that's allocated for water and sewer and infrastructure of that nature. But again, I want to emphasize that we have to do our best to advocate to Congress that they pass the American Jobs Plan. That's the bill that's going to give cities like Gary significant dollars to do all of these, in addition to roads and bridges and other pieces of infrastructure.
Thank you, Senator Melton. At this time, we'll hear from Representative Hatcher.
Okay, so I'm not going to go as long as Eddie did. I think that at first I just want to thank Godwin for inviting me. I am a resident, as he said, as well as a state rep. So it's interesting to get on and be able to hear the concerns of the regular that the city council gets to hear these days that I miss out on. So I think that there was a couple of really important bills that passed this time. One was 1006. That was the police reform bill. That bill did a number of things. It gave mandatory training for de-escalation to bring down the temperature in the room when there's an incident. There is basic training, just dealing with people on an everyday basis, in-service training. It went further, defined what chokehold was and when was the appropriate time to use it. It's almost never, but we still couldn't get rid of the language that indicated that it was okay if. The Indiana Black Caucus was working to make sure that the chokehold was removed completely from the statute, and it wasn't. There was a compromise there, just requiring it only in situations of life and death. There was a part added in about body cams, and if an officer turned it off during an incident, it was considered a misdemeanor. So that was kind of the basis of 1006. The other things that kind of went on during session this time, and I know didn't say too much about how just the atmosphere in Indianapolis this year, but it was very different, partly because of COVID, but just partly because of all the issues that we were facing in the country regarding discrimination and racism. There were some things that came up throughout session that made session a lot more difficult than it normally would be. So a lot didn't really happen. And I heard Senator Melton go through the wonderful things that were passed. And this was probably the first time that many Democrats were able to actually vote for a budget. So this is certainly my first year voting for one. But it was only done because of the federal stimulus money, and because the federal stimulus money had to be used for certain purposes. So we got teacher raises and we got those kind of things included, education money because of COVID, because of the stimulus federal money. But those are not normal things that are normally in the budget. So we're happy that they were there, but I don't want to give the impression that that's a ongoing thing, that the state of Indiana has made some big change in how they view education or how they view urban areas or minority areas, because they haven't. Also, just a couple of extra things that went on. We had a couple good juvenile bills that didn't allow for direct file. So right now there are certain crimes that can be committed as a juvenile, and they are directly filed into adult court at the age as young as 14. And so that was changed this year, which was a pretty big step, especially for the Indiana legislature and the Courts and Criminal Code Committee. So that was done. That was something that was that certainly impacted Lake County and Marion County and St. Joe County. But we also had some bad things happen, like the group that is chosen, that chooses our judges here in Lake County, St. Joe County, and Marion County, those minority, majority counties in the state of Indiana. Our judges are chosen by the governor. We only elect the one. Right now, ours is Marissa McDermott. She's the judge of the Circuit County Court, but everybody else is chosen by the governor. Previously, there was a board, a committee that came together, got 3 names, sent it down to Indy. The governor would pick. Those 3 people, they were made up of lawyers, 3 lay people. Now that's changed. Right now, it's going to be a group that is basically put together by the governor, and then they will still send the 3 names down to Indianapolis. So when you have a community like Lake County, where we are a majority Democrat county, we are basically saying that the governor is going to continue to get the pick. And besides that, we still have the issue that we are 3 out of 92 counties that are unable to pick and elect our own judges. And it makes a difference, because when you have a person in your community that's going in front of a judge, they have the opportunity to make that decision on how long you stay in jail or if you don't stay in jail. And so the community should always have the opportunity to pick those people, just like they get to pick the council and the state reps and the state senators and everybody else who is making decisions on their behalf. So that was kind of a policy talk on bills, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, there's not much that really happened this session besides that. The budget was the big thing. This was our long year. And so we were in for 4 months instead of 3 because of the budget. It was a different kind of session. And I don't think I'm not sure what happened over on the Senate side, but certainly the House side was pretty rowdy.
Right. I think it's also important to mention that we're technically not out of session, right? We're in recess, and typically we will be gabbled out of session. They call it sign and die. The only reason why we're still in recess is because we haven't received the census updates from the federal government. We have to approve and draw maps. And to be honest with you, being in the super minority, Democrats won't have much of a influence or input when it comes down to how our maps are drawn. As you know, our congressional and legislative maps are determined by population, and the party that is in control here in the state of Indiana and in several other states, you're going to have a lot of gerrymandering in a lot of districts that are drawn to favor one party in particular. So be prepared to see a lot of news and coverage on how our maps are being drawn.
And if I could just add to that, Senator Melton, also what we're hearing is that, especially on the House side, is that those areas that are majority minority areas, those are going to be tightened up. So right now, my district includes part of Hobart, so does Senator Melton's, but Hobart is, they just had their mayor switch from Democrat to Republican. And so we assume that that line is going to be drawn to probably include more of Hobart. Sometimes it's good that we're not limited to our city, that we go, so mine goes out to Lake Station, to Hobart, to New Chicago. But that's good because we're able to pull in those people that are up against those same lines on the other side and say, hey, this is good for part of your area. You should vote with us on this part or on that part. But the more they tighten it up, for example, if Gary becomes its own district or 2 districts for the House of Representatives, then we'll be representing just one area or one city, one mayor, one community, which makes it more difficult to kind of go across the line and say, hey, Republican, we need your help on this vote, or ask for assistance. So those lines are really going to be important this time. It's after 10 years. We're already in the super minority, but we have some Republicans that are so close to those urban areas that sometimes they do vote with us. And so that might change this time as well.
Yeah. Well, one other quick thing I think is important to mention, and it's a Gary specific piece of legislation, is what Representative Burl Harris carried in terms of accessing more liquor license on the lakefront. So what was that, 1090? What was that bill?
I don't know. I didn't vote for it. So.
Yeah. So that was passed the legislature. So it provides communities like Portage, Gary, Whiting, which already had it, the ability that if they're doing development, you can have a liquor license on the lakefront. I offered an amendment in that bill after talking to a lot of first district constituents in terms of making sure that there's a public hearing and a public forum that folks know what's going to be developed, if anything, and who's requesting a liquor license on a lakefront. So we were able to get that legislation amended to ensure there's a level of transparency.
Thank you.
Different area in Indiana. One of the things about Indiana is that you can go like 20 miles south and you're in a completely different world. It's like a whole different place. And the people are completely different. They have different values, different ideas about what a criminal justice system should look like, lengths of time served should look like, if you should be able to have a public defender or not. Everything is different all over the state of Indiana. So when you're talking about your judge and the person who is going to take the time to look at your case and decide if you're guilty or innocent, or if charges should have even been brought in the first place, we're looking for people who are not only compassionate as a person and empathetic or sympathetic, but we're looking for someone who understands what the community is and what our community standards are and what our community goals are. So if you have someone from our governor is from Marion County and is from Indianapolis, so he's a bit different than our previous governors. But when you have somebody that doesn't understand that world, or that just an urban world in general, or who has lived in a rural area in Indiana their whole lives, come to a spot like Lake County or Marion County or St. Joe County and tries to implement those kind of values or ideas in those counties, then there's some issues, there's some problems, because number one, they don't understand, and number two, the way that they may implement justice may be different. So I think one of the things that, and I'm sure it's true for Senator Melton as well, we spend probably 90% of our time trying to get other legislators to just understand our problems, not to try to sway them to our side, just for them to understand why we have to bring this legislation or why we need something done in our area. And so it seems extremely unfair for only our 3 counties to have to go through this process, where the other counties are able to elect their judges as normal.
Well, thank you so much to both Senator Melton and Representative Hatcher. And we'll definitely have you all back before the year is out. Thanks again to our representatives from the Gary Parks Department. We're going to be following up next month. I did want to remind people that our next council meeting will be on Tuesday, June 1st at 6:00 p.m. Our next community meeting will be on Thursday, June 24th. We'll have County Commissioner Kyle Allen as well as Congressman Frank